Hey Slush Pile Survivor Riders, thanks for coming back. I'm really excited to get into Character Craze with you. I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I was going to do a series of videos called Character Craze, and what we're going to do with those is really focus our craft on developing characters. And how we're going to do that is we're going to take the cast of Hamilton, peel back each character, really understand their intricacies, the complexities of their development, and start to understand why they work so well in their story.
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot.
Lin-Manuel Miranda really didn't have a lot of wiggle room when it came to bringing these characters to life. He had to kind of figure out, how am I going to tell this historical lesson in a way that not only engages, but really emotionally turns people who are going to come and see this. And their story is so emotionally turning. And a big part of that is because of how complex this cast is, because real people are complex. So in my Character Craze videos, what I'm going to do is spend one video each time looking at a specific character, and I'm going to kind of unravel them in a way that I think is helpful when you start developing your own characters, what roles you start with and how you trickle them in, and understanding what really makes a strong character. The leading antagonist in Hamilton is Aaron Burr. Now, if you haven't seen Hamilton or listened to the soundtrack, one of the only things that you might remember about Aaron Burr is that he was the infamous vice president who shot and killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. I know that's what I remembered before the Broadway show. Another thing that you might remember is that Got Milk commercial ways back where Aaron Burr is, sitting and he's eating a bunch of, I think, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and he's stuffing his mouth, and then he's watching TV, and it's like a Jeopardy show, I think, and the question is, who shot and killed Alexander Hamilton in the famous duel. And Aaron Burr can't. He gets on the phone, he gets the call, and he's going, but he can't talk because his mouth is full of peanut butter and jelly. So those are usually the two things that people knew about Aaron Burr until Hamilton. And why Hamilton really, really puts a spotlight on Aaron Burr is because of how complex, but also how authentic he is as a character on the stage. Now, when you start outlining your characters, a lot of writers start with their protagonist, and there's no one way to outline your characters. You can start with whoever you want. I recommend starting with the antagonist, because if you don't have a killer antagonist, if you don't have an antagonist who really challenges your hero to become the hero who they need to be, then you don't really have a hero who has reason to be anything more than who they are at the present. So looking at your antagonists first, understanding their motives, understanding really what is going to challenge them, understanding their consequences and their stakes, understanding how they foil your protagonist is going to change the game when it comes to outlining your protagonist, as well as structuring your plot and how you're going to be putting your antagonist and your protagonist in conflict with one another.
Mr. Secretary.
I'm not going to spend this week's video deep diving into what makes a great antagonist and how I think Aaron Burr emulates an extraordinary antagonist, because I think it's going to be a lot more beneficial if you spend this week either Spotifying, YouTubing, or preferably buying the Hamilton soundtrack and listening to his songs. I'm going to pull up my list right now, and I'm just going to give you, the titles of what they're going to be, and I'm going to do a longer video next week, and what I'll do is I'll walk through each song, explain what's going on there, and kind of show you how Aaron Burr starts out this way, and just like a protagonist should, transform and changes to become something else based on his wants and desires and the external and internal conflicts that impact him. If you want to follow along and prepare for next week, the songs that I'm going to walk through are number 1, starting with Aaron Burr, Sir. Then we're going to touch briefly on My Shot, not because Aaron Burr really has a big solo or anything in my Shot, but more so because it is the exact foil of Alexander Hamilton. It's the only difference really between Burr's actions and Hamilton's actions, and really what makes them different. So we're going to touch base on that one. Then we're going to look at Right Hand Man, I want to look at, wait for it, of course, because it's the solo of solos, and it's Aaron Burr's solo, and it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We'll look at Dear Theodosia, and we'll look at Nonstop. So that's the first half of the soundtrack. And then I'm just pulling up my next ones, the next songs that we're going to look for. Then we're going to look at The Room Where It Happens. This is really where Burr starts to shift. He's been kind of keeping everything close to his chest up to this point, and he finally starts to tell us what he wants. We start to really get an idea of what that is. We're going to look at Washington on Your Side. We're going to look at Hurricane, motif reasons. And then we'll move into really where Burr and Hamilton start getting pinned against one another, which is The Election of 1800, Your Obedient Servant, The World Was Wide Enough, and Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story. So that will be the conclusion of them. So I know it's a lot of songs, but that's why I think it's going to be really beneficial if you YouTube, Spotify, purchase the soundtrack, listen to them once, twice, you don't have to, but it might make it more fun, more interesting when I go through these songs next video, and walking through why they make a great antagonist, and defending my argument as to why you should outline your antagonist first. So again, writers feel sometimes like they have to follow these formulaic rules. I don't want to make you feel like you have to follow the rule of always develop your antagonist first, but I'm encouraging the idea that if you do develop your antagonist first, it's probably going to make an even more arousing protagonist, because you're forcing them to be posed and pinned and conflicted against someone who's going to call them to be a hero. There are lots of antagonists in a story. There are tons of other antagonists in Hamilton. I'll talk about that a little bit more, but let's focus on Burr first. Let's understand why he's awesome, why he's so sympathetic, and also why that sympathy for him makes us love him and care about him even more. Have some fun listening to those. Please feel free to email me, call me if you have any questions about Aaron Burr, or anything going on, or if anything sparks inspiration that you'd like to talk about more. I'd love to address it in next week's video. So that will be a longer one. I might divide it into two depending on how long it is. But my blog and StoryGrid will also be coming out about Aaron Burr that week, so it'll be a great weekend to look at antagonist and Aaron Burr specifically. I hope you love the soundtrack as much as I do, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everyone.